What were the noble and bad traits of the Chinese monarchy, and how did the Chinese emperors deal with Christianity?
Oof, that is a good question. Well, the bad traits is that the biggest bad trait is that it was non-Christian, non-Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And so the laws had a tremendous severity to them.
Like what?
Well, like you could be put to death in very unpleasant ways, ways that even the Inquisition never came up with. The death by 1,000 cuts,
Really?
and being skinned alive, and just really unpleasant stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, wasn't nice. Having said that, it was still better than Mao.
What? Why is that?
Oh, because Mao Zedong was a great one for killing thousands upon thousands at once. He had a bigger body count than Stalin, let alone Hitler.
I see.
And yet we don't have the same, we're not raised with the same disgust for Mao that we are for Hitler. And with good reason, because we're making money out of his successors. And you know, with Americans, money covers a lot of moral issues.
Mm.
That's how we are as a people, and I'm proud of it, personally. Anyway, it could be true. Anyway, but there were some redeeming characteristics. Confucianism certainly, at least externally speaking, it certainly led one to cultivate the natural virtues. And the other thing that's interesting, certain, I must say, Protestant Chinese have gone into great detail likening the sacrificial ceremonies of the emperors to Old Testament ritual. And to the degree that there's any merit in this, I suspect it would be because of that, of what we spoke about earlier, of the remnants of the original revelation given all mankind surviving in that particular manner among the Chinese. Artistically, of course, you know, the Chinese emperors encouraged all kinds of beauty. There's no doubt about that. Breathtaking, some of it. As to how they were with Christianity, it depended upon the emperor. Some of them favored, especially under the Ming and the early Qing dynasties, they favored the faith to some degree. Certainly, it became the practice for some of them to have Jesuit astronomers. So some of them favored us. With the Chinese rites becoming illegal, there began something of a persecution.
I didn't catch that. I didn't follow. Chinese rites becoming illegal?
Yeah, the Jesuits in the 1500s came up with what were called the Chinese rites, which meant that Catholics would be allowed to indulge in a certain amount of ancestor veneration, a certain amount of veneration of Confucius and so on, which was held to be civic and not religious. But the Dominicans said, no, it's religious. And this led to the whole fight over them, the Chinese rites controversy. Eventually, the Vatican, in the late 17th century, found in favor of the Dominicans, and the Chinese rites were banned. And the emperor at that time...
Wait, the Dominicans or the Jesuits?
The Jesuits favored them, the Dominicans opposed them.
Okay.
And so the Chinese emperor took offense to that. And that began the first round of persecutions. In the 19th century, the faith became involved, it became very much identified for many Chinese, not necessarily the emperors, but local governors and so on, with the depredations of the European powers. And so, whenever they were having a hard time with the Europeans, Chinese Catholics suffered. But contrariwise, when they were doing well with them, they were favored. And the last treaty between the Holy See and the Emperor of China, which was in 1909, 1910, gave the church a lot of benefits. The Catholic priests would have the same recognition as mandarins, that kind of thing. You can read all about it in the Catholic Encyclopedia entry on China, the old Catholic Encyclopedia. It goes into great detail. Unfortunately, for all concerned, the Chinese Revolution of 1911-1912 overthrew the monarchy and thus voided that treaty. And then the church faced a whole new set of issues. So that's what I have to say about the Chinese monarchy.